Hey traders, welcome to the end of day recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and we'll start with looking at the major indices as we do, just about every video. I usually don't spend that much time on them. I spent a little bit more time on them on the S&P in last night's video. If you are a regular watcher of the video and you remember what I said about the S&P, we were running very, very hot. So I posed the question in last night's video, how much more overbought do you think we're going to get? I think that's the kind of thing that you have to ask yourself every once in a while as a trader and say, how much is enough? And then you could always kind of put yourself a little bit more into a cash position and then think about redeploying that cash once things are a little bit more attractive, right? So, of course, we have a major uptrend, but it just got to me. First of all, every time price has been butting up against this uptrend line, we seem to not be able to take it out, which is fine. We've really made a big run, and we were way overbought, close to close to an 80 RSI on the relative strength index. Again, anything over 70 is overbought. So we were really running hot. So, I think we got a little bit of political headlines. Basically, and I don't mean to throw that in there, but when you're priced to perfection, even like a little bit of political headlines about a tax plan will cause you to sell off a little bit. And I think we really saw that. We really saw that in the small caps. Usually that's the first thing that kind of gets hit when you have U.S. political headlines. But all in all, nothing really to kind of over-examine here, other than the fact that we got a little bit too stretched. You can see for IWM, they were down. That was down 1.1%. It's still holding support. Just not a great day. So we'll see what that does tomorrow. Right around this 150 level is your support, right at that red line. Also the 50-day moving average, which is the purple line on my chart. So just kind of taking its time. Again, it's been on such a big run. This, I think, is expected that we can't just go up straight in a perfect straight line. The Qs held some strength earlier. They did finish. It looks like the Qs finished down on the day. So, I'm actually hoping, for me in a perfect world, for what I want to see, is for us to actually finish or for us to actually sell off a little bit overnight and come in where we're like 30 or 40 basis points down. And then we have a chance a little bit more to trade things. This move where we're basically up 10 basis points or up 20 basis points to kind of start the day doesn't leave a lot of good trade setups. It's really picky that you have to be especially last night the overnight markets were all down. Europe and Asia were down. It was like, how the hell is the US up? So it really just did not have a good setup at all feeling today to trade. However, we did get a few surprises, and I'll kind of start there. The FANG stocks, take a look at what happened today. They all, gave a little bit of a day trades. If you're a day trader, Facebook. I mean, a lot of them gave it back. But Facebook, if you kind of look at the beginning of the day, all the FANG stocks looked exactly the same. And I think at the end of the day, it kind of looks that way too. I couldn't tell them apart. So it looks like somebody had a buy order in the beginning of the day, maybe finished up. Maybe there was just a little bit too much selling pressure at the end of the day. Same thing with Google. I mean, almost the identical first couple hours of the day across the board in the FANG stocks. Those were your leader. And again, they gave it mostly back. Amazon was a little bit stronger. That stayed up there. But again, the first 2 hours, I don't know how you could have separated those four FANG stocks. They were exactly, it made the exact same move in all four of them. So I think there was a little bit of a buy program that went into them. Some of them held, some of them did not. They kind of washed through. If you're looking to watch that whole group, it's the FDN ETF, and you can see it still finished up 20 basis points, basically right where it started. So it gave you, I guess, an opportunity to kind of go long and to short as long as you were disciplined in this group. Again, it looks exactly like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix the first 2 hours of the day. And again, we've been seeing this, not to pick on the FANG stocks, but we've been seeing this where we rise up a little bit in the morning, and then we give it all back. So that's been the pattern this week. So if you're not comfortable with that, you just you just tread lightly and kind of stay out of it. I did very little trading today. It's mostly for me like setups going into the next day. Putting on some trades at the end of the day and then maybe taking some of those targets off right in the beginning of the day when we get that bounce. That's how this week is. I would say maybe the week plus, maybe a little bit longer than 1 week. Tesla was another name that was kind of frustrating. This was a trade that I put on a couple days ago. I did so good to take some money off, but look at this thing. It was up to 347 and then all the way to 337. So it to me, if we're looking at all these charts and they go up in the beginning of the day and they sell off at the end of the day, the market seems a little bit exhausted. And again, nothing. If you look back at the last couple weeks, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's perfectly normal. Let's get us off. Let's get the market off these overbought levels a little bit, and then we can kind of go back into some bigger swing trade positions. But this is what the Tesla chart looks like. Again, I think eventually we take out this 354 level. Chanos was also on, and he's a big bear. Tesla bear has been for a long time. So just the fact that he's on TV maybe caused a little bit. His comments are so bearish. Maybe that weighed on Tesla a little bit. Probably the stock of the day was Twitter. That didn't finish on the highs either, though. This was a trade that I put on back here when we saw call buying. I think on Monday, 2 inside days, and then a blast off today. So again, you have to be, I think, just aware that take, especially in your options positions, as I've said this before, in many other videos, have to be cognizant of just being satisfied with a 30% or 50% profit. There's nothing wrong with taking 50% profits and taking that trade off and then reassessing, maybe putting back on. But it actually did okay here. It held in pretty good. This was the first time, like not Tesla, Twitter's been running very nice without any buyout rumors. Today was the first day that the buyout rumors kind of gave it the momentum today. But real nice play in the Tribeca Trade Group room. Again, a lot of the trades that we've been putting on the last couple days have just been working out pretty well. ServiceNow was another name. We saw a weekly call buyer. I didn't want any exposure to a weekly call buyer. So what I did was I structured it differently, and I mentioned this earlier in the week. I put on a January call spread, and working out really nicely today, up 2.2%. Rising into the Oracle earnings. Speaking of Oracle, just kind of one of those names that I don't really play for earnings because they come out with good numbers, and this happens to it. So I didn't read enough into their earnings report to know why that happened, but they did the same thing back here. They had good numbers and they got smoked. So when names do this, when companies do this, for earnings, it's best to just like avoid them. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So if it doesn't make a ton of sense, you don't have to play it. I didn't play it. Talked about the setup today in the trading room, but no reason to do that. Adobe was another one, which they came out with great numbers, but it looks like the move has kind of been made. You have to zoom out to see what kind of, last time they reported. I always like to look where the price was the last time they reported earnings, because if they've gone up as much as they have, they've gone from 155 all the way up to 175. So initial reaction was higher. They're up a little bit here post close. Costco was another name that I did not touch. Again, analyzed it, but they had good numbers. But again, look at the chart. How much more do you think these things are going to go up? After making a run from the 200-day moving average, 164 to 186. So I guess the theme that I'm trying to say, and that I talked a little bit about yesterday, was let's not be too greedy here, and just kind of be patient. Let the market come into you. I've talked about biotech a couple times. I think this is fascinating at this point. That the fact, look at the engulfing bar today, and it took out this green bar yesterday. Take a look at the performance of the XB. This is the equally weighted biotech ETF. Look at how many days this thing has moved 1%. 1, 2, 3. Not all one direction. Plus or minus 1%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 days in a row. And I think that's 8 out of 9 days. There's only one day. That's a lot of volatility. And it's just basically been going sideways. So this is a tough space to be in right now. Again, another tough space that until it kind of reveals what direction it wants to go, stay away. We talked about I've talked about Baba. I don't know why I'm talking about Baba so much, but it's just really good. It's a good um, lesson to kind of say, hey, if you're playing for a bounce, you get a bounce and it does this, get out. I got out on this day, and I'm kind of like just I'm happy that um, I'm being disciplined in my trading, and if it doesn't work, do what you want it to do, then get out. There's no problem. You could reassess. People are so afraid to admit that they're wrong, that they don't take off trades when they should. Another example is ISRG. I don't have a position in it, but I'm just kind of watching. Big uptrend. Look, it broke. It broke on this day, came up and retested. This is textbook sell signal in using the value areas. It it had a couple day bounce. Where did it bounce up to? And it failed right at the bottom of value. So a retest and a fail, and now it's lower than it was here. So I don't really have an explanation for it other than, it's made its move at this point. So stay, get away from it at this point until it, reclaims that 50-day moving average, that purple line. No reason to mess with something that no longer has the upside momentum. Plenty of other things to look at. One trade that I did take, which I'm really not trying to get into semiconductor positions right now, but there was a real nice trade in ADI today. And it's got a nice setup. It's on the 50-day moving average. So I did take this trade today. They swept about 500 contracts, and then they bought 2,500. It's a decent-sized trade. It's about $800,000 in premium. I've paid attention. There was one other time where we saw aggressive call activity in ADI and analog, and it worked out. I did not participate in that. It took a little bit time. So some of these things that we see on the tape, again, you don't have to participate in every time. You can kind of learn whether or not, when we do see call activity in a name, if it does work. So the other thing that makes this kind of an easy setup is if it decides to break the 50-day moving average, then I'm out. Couple other names that I mentioned in last night's video, YY, which I put on a trade yesterday. It's not doing, I mentioned not doing what I wanted to. So, it was not able to break out today. I'm going to give this a little bit more time. I don't see a sell signal. It's just, obviously was not ready to go today. It's still above the short-term moving averages. It's in value. If you go to the 1 hour time frame, it actually held this. So if it breaks into value tomorrow below 107.47, I may have to dump that position. But for now, there's nothing really to do. I don't think it's a major cause concern, other than that support is just down there about 20 cents away. I also talked about JD, and I put out a trade idea for this. I think this is fine. After a big day, this is the normal course of trading. After you have a really big day, big volume, breaking an uptrend line, and a name just basically down just a touch on the day, went lower but held in there. I think this looks fine as well. So that was a name that we mentioned yesterday, and I put out a trade idea on it. I think I went over most of the day's option activity. There's a couple other things. STZ. This was a call spread that we mentioned 2 days ago. There was a nice January call spread. They report earnings, I think, on the 5th. Is it? Yeah, the 5th of January. But I like this chart, and something a little bit different. Notice a couple things here in the chart is that it's in an uptrend. It made a nice move above value. It tried to do it the other day. This was the day that they bought the call spread, and then they bought more today. So I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. This was what they did. They bought 4,000 of the January 215 calls, and they sold the 230 calls. So nice, pretty healthy looking call spread. I mean, notice the dollar amount of this. This is about a $2.5 million trade, this call spread. So sometimes, people look and they say, oh, it's just a call spread. It's still a very big trade. And then today they added more. Similar looking trade. This was the 230, 240 call spread that appears to be bought 5,000 times. So I like this name. I like also having different things than, a little bit of diversification. I like the Constellation brands. One other thing to note here, MACD crossover as well, as it's just kind of moving out and up. So that I would say one of the best trades of the day. There was also a nice Mylan call spread where it looks like they bought calls, sold puts. Just a few other trades. Salesforce, they do this a lot. They buy a competitor, right before a name reports earnings, before Oracle reported. And then CC, kind of an interesting looking chart. I did not take this trade. I think it's interesting. It's compelling. I just don't have a great feel for CC. You've got the 200-day moving average support. But this is a long trade. This is 2019, and for something like this where I'm like, I don't love this particular name, I'm not going to sit for 6 months in the one trade. Maybe if we see another bigger, another trade that hits the tape for repeat activity, then I would say, okay, that it interests me a little bit more. But for now, it's just the first trade that I've really seen go out that far. A couple other things maybe off some people's radar. If you take a look at, I like to look at cash blocks as well as big volume in some different things. One of which, if I can bring up my scanner for ETFs, take a look at the volume today. So this is sorted by biggest volume percentage change over the 30-day. The 30-day average volume. Look at the Greek ETF. It normally trades 600,000 shares a day, traded just about 3 times the average volume. If we look at a chart here in Bloomberg, and I bring up the Greek ETF, take a look at this. This is pretty interesting, I think. Let me zoom in, make sure that's a 1-year chart. It spent some time underneath that yellow line, the 200-day moving average. And it's back above, and look at a gap above the green line is the 100-day moving average, but it kind of looks like an inverted head and shoulders for the Greek ETF. So I did not add a position. You can see again the volume. I love to see the volume like this, confirming a move. So it looks pretty interesting to me in the Greek ETF. So no position yet, but maybe again I don't like to. Right now I'm just not in the mode of adding a bunch of names. But that's on the radar to possibly add for tomorrow. All right, thanks for watching the video. Have a great night.